Hello everyone. Today, I will recap the movie Dune, Part 2. Have you noticed the giant sand monsters? They possess terrifying power, can swallow everything, and only the Fremen can control them. In this part, the main character is the son of a fugitive duke. Surprisingly, he has the ability to control the largest monster in the herd. Can he win the support of the Fremen to fight against the rule of the Emperor and the Harkonnen family? Let's follow today's recap. After defeating the Fremen on Arrakis, Paul's pregnant mother seeks help to return to her homeland. However, Paul disagrees. He wants to fulfill his father's wish to join the Fremen army and learn how to fight. Therefore, the whole family follows Stilgar to the Fremen gathering area in the desert. On the way back, they accidentally encounter a Harkonnen patrol. Stilgar quickly finds a place to hide and wait for an opportunity to attack. Paul and Jessica also hide next to a cliff. Not long after, several patrols approach them. While the two were panicking, the patrol suddenly left because they noticed signs of a sand digging machine, which was used to summon the most dangerous creatures in the desert, sandworms. The Harkonnens fly to higher ground and quickly locate the digger. They fire at it, but when they turn back to check the area, their leader is suddenly shot down into the abyss. Panicking, they put up their shields, but cannot avoid falling to the ground, because the Fremen have created weapons that can penetrate their armor. In the end, only one Harkonnen survives. He jumps to the ground and pulls out his knife to find the Fremen. Paul and Jessica, hiding nearby, are immediately discovered. Left with no choice, Paul rushes out, takes a knife from another Harkonnen's corpse, and fights him. With his fighting skills, Paul quickly defeats him. However, just behind him, another man with a gun appears. As he is about to pull the trigger, Jessica intervenes in time to save her son. After killing them all, the Fremen army gathered supplies and drained their bodies, making the most of every resource. They eventually gathered the corpses in one place to use as bait to summon the sandworms to feast on, as a way to make a deal with the creatures. When they returned to set a cave, they were met with contempt from everyone, especially after Paul killed their hero. Some members suspected that Paul and Jessica were spies and wanted to expel them from the place. On the other hand, many believed in the prophecy that the mother and son from the outside world would bring good luck to Ayaki, as the son was considered the supreme being. Inside, Stilgar tries to convince the High Council to let Paul and Jessica stay. He sees many signs that Paul might be the one of legend. He defeated one of their warriors, speaks and understands the Fremen language, and comprehends their culture. Stilgar is willing to trust and follow Paul. The High Council begins to waver, and decides to give them a chance. Paul tells Jessica that he has grown up, and what he needs to do now is to avenge his father and his people. The only way to do this was to enlist the Fremen army, so that he could become the supreme being of their legend. They were treated to a dish with a distinct Fremen flavor, which made Paul feel a little hesitant. Seeing this, Chani's friend, Shishakli, mocked them for being people of other races. Chani, on the other hand, recognized Paul's efforts and courage and believed that he deserved respect. At this time, Stilgar called Jessica inside to attend Jamie's funeral. There, she saw them using straws to suck water from his body. The water was piped into a large pool inside the cave, but no one was allowed to drink it, even if they were dying of thirst. This water would be kept until the day the Supreme Being appeared, freeing them from the Emperor's rule. The tribe planned to use this water to regenerate the ecosystem, turning the barren desert into lush oases covered with trees. They had prepared thousands of such places throughout the desert. Stilgar said that Siege Tabor's Supreme Mother was dying, and that she needed to find a replacement. Of course, Jessica was the only suitable candidate for the position. If Jessica became Supreme Mother, the gossip in the clan about them would disappear, and Paul's position as Supreme Being would be further consolidated. On the contrary, if Jessica fails, the consequences will force them to die. Jessica had no choice but to agree. However, to become the successor, she had to participate in a ritual in which she had to drink a blue liquid called the Water of Life, a highly toxic substance extracted from sandworms. The drinker must endure extreme pain. Only by surviving can she inherit all the memories of the previous Supreme Mothers, including their pain. If she fails, she will have to sacrifice her life. After Jessica had been inside for a long time, Paul worriedly asked Chani about the situation inside. Chani and Shishakli, and some others were from the Northern Fremen branch, so they did not believe in the ritual or the power of the Supreme Mother. They believed that if anyone could save the Fremen, it would be the Fremen. At that moment, Stilgar came out and told the members to start praying, because the ritual had been performed. Inside, Jessica learned that the Water of Life was extracted from the poison in the sandworm's body, which had the ability to release any soul that came near. She felt scared and wanted to give up, but the priesthood recited a spell that compelled Jessica to drink the water. Immediately, she convulsed, fell to the ground, her whole body ached, and her nose began to bleed. The child in her womb was also affected by the poison. In the end, Jessica passed the test. Her eyes turned blue like those of the surviving Fremen, inheriting all the memories of ancestors in the supreme maternal lineage. Even the fetus in her womb was awakened, named Alia, and was able to communicate with her mother even though she had not yet been born. Jessica was carried outside while the two Fremen groups, South and North, were arguing fiercely. Stildar tried to convince the Northern Fremen group that the prophecy was true because Jessica had drunk the water of life and was still alive. Chani disagrees, believing that people are being too superstitious, which leads her to argue with Stildar. At that moment, Paul stepped in to stop everyone. He revealed that Jessica was still alive thanks to her poison resistance. Paul was not someone who intended to rule. He only wanted to become a good warrior to avenge his tribe by studying and fighting alongside the Fremen, not to rule them. His words calmed the anger of the Northern Fremen group and made Stilgar's group believe in the prophecy even more. Inside, Jessica finally regains consciousness. She holds her son's hand, surprising everyone, and says that younger sister told Jessica that he is the supreme being. She advises him to drink the water of life to understand the past and see the future. Later that day, in order to be recognized by the Fremen, Paul must complete a challenge, travel to the other side of the dunes, and return before dawn. Stildar provides him with tents and food, and reminds Paul that the desert is full of dangers. In addition to sandworms, there are poisonous spiders, large centipedes, and small centipedes. Small centipedes are sometimes more poisonous than large centipedes, especially the spirits of the dead, who can tempt him to take over his body. As night falls, Stildar watches with satisfaction as Paul is frightened by the mysteries around him. Shishakli realized that Chani was very worried about Paul. This was the first time she saw Chani develop feelings for someone. Chani not only admitted it, but was also touched by Paul's sincerity and Paul's appearance. Seeing Paul walking awkwardly, Chani guided him through some basic moves. The two of them crossed Sokat's territory together. That night, they completed Stildar's trial. Paul also gradually developed feelings for Chani, the beautiful and strong girl of this land. The Harkonnen mining ship had just landed in the desert when the Fremen army was ready to ambush. They hid under the sand, only revealing a small breathing tube. As the Harkonnen lined up around the ship to protect the mining ship, as soon as they got close, the Fremen army immediately rushed out from under the sand. The Harkonnen had no time to react and were quickly defeated by the Fremen. Suddenly, the Harkonnen airship appeared and continuously fired bullets at the Fremen group. They immediately took cover under the gears of the mining ship. Paul and Chani decided to attack the enemy flying ship, while the rest of the group executed Plan B. The two attempted to block the flying ship's vision by hiding under the mining ship. However, while Chani was reloading, a Harkonnen spotted them. Paul immediately engaged the man, but two more appeared. He quickly rushed out to confront them. After defeating one, Paul realized that the other was heading towards Chani. He quickly shouted a warning to her. Chani immediately pulled out her gun and shot the man, sending him flying into the mining ship. However, the gunfire revealed their location, causing the second shot at the flying ship to be blocked by the shield. Harkonnen quickly counterattacked Chani. To destroy the flying ship, they needed to wait for it to turn off its shield, which usually happened when the flying ship actively attacked them. Therefore, Paul decided to sacrifice himself to attract attention. He quickly ran to the other side, attracting the flying ship's attention to himself. The flying ship immediately turned towards Chani, but she was ready and fired a precise shot at it. The flying ship exploded. The Fremen immediately emerged from the sand and simultaneously used laser guns to fire at the mining ships, destroying them. Thanks to Paul's help, today's battle was a great victory. That night, everyone in the tent celebrated together. They were curious about how Paul fought. Paul said that it was something he learned from his teachers, but they were no longer alive because of the Harkonnens. In fact, his Atreides clan had fought the Harkonnens for centuries and had mastered their methods and strategies. This knowledge would be very beneficial to the Fremen clan, experienced warriors in the desert. Everyone was moved and admired his story, so they officially abandoned their prejudices against him, decided to consider Paul a member of the Fremen clan, and gave him a name Muad'Dib. Chani and Paul sat and talked on a sand dune. She told stories about Paul's hometown, where it rained all year round, the air was clean, and there were many trees. Paul also asked Chani about her alias. Chani explained that her name was taken from a prophecy called Shahara. Then the two sat and looked at each other affectionately. In the distance, Stilgar rides a sandworm, gliding like the wind across the desert. Paul also wants to try his hand at taming this creature. A few days later, the Fremen army, with the help of Paul's knowledge, achieves many victories, stopping the exploitation of their spice. That night in the tent, Paul sees another vision of the future. As he travels south as a messiah, a holy war breaks out, causing him to witness many people starving to death along the way. Then a strange girl guides him, but Paul cannot see who she is. The next day was the final test that the desert had in store for Paul. Stilgar and Paul walked a distance together. He then gave Paul a sand-digging machine to summon the sandworm. If Paul successfully used the machine, he would officially become a Fremen warrior. While Shishakli was happily watching the play, Chani was worried about the danger of the sandworm. Paul arrived, placed the machine in a depression, and waited on a nearby dune. Very quickly, dust and sand rose like a storm. The worm this time was truly enormous, terrifying Stilgar and everyone present. They had never seen such a big one before, especially Paul, a newcomer. However, Paul was not afraid at all. He held two hooks and waited for the worm to come closer. He rushed towards the sandworm's lut and promptly inserted the two hooks into its body. The sandworm continued to move quickly, creating a cloud of dust that made it difficult for everyone to see. When the dust settled, everyone saw that Paul had stood up straight and was skillfully riding the sandworm across the desert. The Fremen were extremely excited and called out his name. In a cave, Jessica also received this news. According to the prophecy, the largest sandworm would appear when the Supreme being called. Now, the faith here was strong, only the south of Arrakis was lacking, so Jessica decided to go there to unite the Fremen to believe in the prophecy. She wanted her son to come with her, but Paul was afraid that his dream would come true and did not dare to go south. Jessica could only set out with a few others the next day. Sandstorms protect the south, forming an impenetrable shield. Of course, riding on sandworm's back would be easier to get through. During the night, Fremen warriors attacked and burned the Harkonnens' stores. Raven, furious, vowed revenge on Paul and immediately mobilized hundreds of warships and armed men to Stilgar's cave. However, upon inspection, he found no signs of life. In a fit of rage, Raven ordered all the bombs to be dropped below. A rain of bombs sent dust flying, and he led his men out to search thoroughly. All attempts to find fault were in vain. He angrily shouted for Paul to appear if he had the courage. 3 seconds later, one Harkonnen was shot down. The others, still unaware of what had happened, were shot down. The Fremen warriors attacked suddenly, causing panic and preventing them from reacting. As soon as Raven boarded the flying ship, he came face to face with a Fremen warrior. At that moment, the flying ship took off, leaving both of them suspended in the air. As the Fremen warrior prepared to attack, he was suddenly hit by a laser gun and fell into the desert. News of the defeat of the Harkonnen army under the command of Paul quickly reached the Emperor. He intended to kill Paul to shake the confidence of the Fremen. However, Princess Irulan opposed this plan. She believed that Paul was a religious figure and that violence should not be used to oppress him, as his faith needed to be respected. Rather than intervene directly, the princess proposed that the two sides fight each other, weakening each other before the Emperor arrived. Irulan met with the Supreme Mother to learn about Paul, learning that he was a man of House Atreides, the son of Duke Leto, the family her father had secretly murdered. The Supreme Mother warned the princess not to reveal this information, for if the other clans learned that the Emperor was working with Harkonnen after the massacre of House Atreides, they would be outraged and protest. Furthermore, not only could Paul become the savior, but there was another candidate for that position, the Baron's nephew, Rotha. However, in contrast to Paul, Rotha was a madman and powerful, feared by the servants as they did not know when he would go on a rampage and kill those around him. On Rotha's birthday, the Baron held a solemn coming-of-age ceremony to enthrone his nephew. According to Harkonnen tradition, those who came of age had to fight Atreides as prisoners to prove their strength. Normally, the prisoners would be injected with drugs to weaken them, but this time the Baron left one prisoner uninjured, and that was a veteran warrior. As soon as he stepped into the yard, Rotha immediately killed 2 weak prisoners. Then, he began to fight the old man. Thanks to his skills, the old man easily dodged Rotha's attacks, and even had the chance to counterattack. However, the magnetic field of the armor blocked his knife. Rotha, confident in his abilities, and immediately took off his armor. The guards immediately surrounded them, to avoid the possibility of the prisoner winning. However, Rotha quickly overpowered the old man, pushed him to the ground, and attacked him with a knife. Just then, a guard stepped forward and stabbed the old man, causing Rotha to become angry and chase the guard away. The two fought for a while, but with years of experience in combat, the old man regained control of the knife. But the old man was still no match for Rotha's strength. Finally, Rotha defeated the old man. The Baron was so pleased with Rotha that he invited Rotha to his sauna, and announced that Rotha would rule Arrakis in place of his useless brother Rathan. If Rotha learned how to effectively exploit the spies there, the Baron would make him emperor. Rotha was delighted. The Baron knew the emperor's secret, which was his fatal weakness. On her way back, Rotha felt someone following her. Rotha immediately appeared behind her. It was a priestess said by the king's supreme mother. She was also the woman Paul had seen in his dream. The nun completed her mission and returned to report to the supreme mother. At the same time, she successfully seduced Rotha and may have had a child in her womb. If Rotha won this battle, the supreme mother would still retain her position. Before leaving, Rotha and the Baron exchanged a farewell kiss. Meanwhile, on Arrakis, a group of spice raiders appear and are illegally harvesting spice when they are ambushed by the Fremen army. Paul hides in the sand and captures the leader. Just as he is about to attack, he suddenly realizes that it is Halleck, the man who taught him martial arts. Paul quickly ended the battle and led the survivors back to his residence. Halleck said that after his defeat, he used all his abilities to bring the remaining people back to their homeland. Halleck decided to stay here with his group to wait for the day to avenge the Duke. However, due to lack of money and materials, the group was forced to become spies thieves to trade on the black market. Seeing that Paul had grown up and was also the famous Paul, Halleck felt relieved. He began to remind Paul about revenge. With the Fremen forces being skilled in combat, they were strong enough to declare war. That night, while reminiscing about old memories, Halleck said he had something to show Paul. The next morning, Halleck and Paul, along with Chani and a group of others, ventured deep into the desert and found a cave on the edge of a cliff. They discovered that it was the Atreides family's secret atomic arsenal. Inside were 92 nuclear warheads, powerful enough to destroy Arrakis. That was why the Emperor was always wary of them, and only dared to attack them at night. The Supreme Mother then went to a temple in the middle of the desert, and obtained a strange blue water of life. After obtaining this water, Jessica asked the temple caretaker to give Paul the water of life, even though this would be very dangerous for him. Halleck and Paul could not make it back in time, so the group pitched tents and slept outside for the night. However, that night they heard a loud explosion. When they ran outside to see, they witnessed their siege tower cave being attacked. The group could only watch helplessly, as the cave was destroyed by bombs. The sacred well was also buried, leading to the destruction of everything, including the innocent people. This was Rotha's plan. Rabban learned of the situation and ran to ask his brother why he had made such a decision. However, Rotha beat Rabban. News of the massacre spread quickly throughout the south. Everyone urged the leader Stilgar to stand up and fight back. Stilgar wanted Paul, as the supreme leader, to lead the people. By law, Paul had to kill the current leader to become replacement. However, Paul refused. He did not want to harm his people, and more importantly, he could not go south because of the prophetic dream. Paul went to James's grave and was advised to go south and drink the water of life. He was terrified of the deaths of innocent people and of losing Chani. Chani came to comfort him, assuring him that they would always be together. The next day, the group decided to go south. However, Shishakli chose to stay behind to stop the enemy, and was eventually killed by Rotha. Meanwhile, Paul's group was riding on the back of the sandworms, rushing into the storm. They quickly reached the south, where Paul was given the water of life. Paul did not hesitate to drink it, fully aware that the worst outcome could be death. Immediately after drinking, Paul saw the past of the entire Atreides clan, and finally the image of a girl saying, "I love you." That girl was his sister, Alia, still in the womb of Jessica. Chani enters and finds Paul lying on the floor, pale. She is angry at the nuns for giving Paul the poisoned water. Just then, the Supreme Mother appears and assures Chani that with his blood and mission, Paul will overcome the danger. However, Chani is furious and scolds the High Mother, claiming that these superstitions will soon kill Paul. Jessica does not explain further, but uses a spell to help Chani mix her tears with the water of life, causing Paul to wake up. Chani angrily slaps Paul and leaves. Thanks to the water of life, Paul saw his victorious future and discovered something shocking. His true identity was the grandchild of the Baron, because Jessica was his daughter. The He Mother only learned this after drinking the water of life. The next day, a meeting took place. Halleck had been waiting for this moment, while Chani seemed unenthusiastic. In order to have a say in the matter, Paul was forced to kill the current leader Stilgar. Stilgar was ready for it. However, Paul declared that he was the chosen one, the supreme being, therefore did not need to become a leader, but was still qualified to lead. The other leaders stood up to protest this claim. At that moment, Paul looked at one of them and revealed that person's past and secrets that only he knew. That person was immediately convinced and knelt before Paul. The others followed suit. Stilgar knelt down and asked Paul what he saw in the future of the Fremen people. Paul put on his family's duke ring and declared that he was the supreme being, vowing to lead the Fremen people to the blue paradise they longed for. The king soon received a letter of challenge from Paul, as Muad'Dib of Fremen. Underestimating the weak power of Fremen, the emperor immediately sent his strongest army to Arrakis. When the emperor arrived, the baron was worried about the possibility of his spice resources being looted, so he secretly informed the other clans that the emperor was about to attack Arrakis. Soon after, the baron was also summoned by the emperor. The emperor asked about Paul and the Fremen clan in the south to prepare for war. However, the baron gave only a vague answer, claiming that Paul was dead, and that the situation in the south was so dire that no one lived there. The king immediately exposed the baron's lies and ordered his soldiers to kill him. Meanwhile, Paul commanded the Fremen army in a nuclear strike on the emperor's forces. After a cheer from the battle-hardened desert troops, the commander, Halleck, fired 3 medium-range warheads. At that moment, a fierce sandstorm struck, shaking the baron's mansion, while the army outside was in a state of disarray. As they regrouped, the Fremen continued their fierce assault on the emperor's army. Dozens of sandworms charged straight at the enemy. Fremen warriors suddenly appeared from the sand, easily destroying them. Despite deploying many aircraft, all were crushed by the storm. Paul's army won, and the remaining troops that fled were annihilated by the desert infantry. Strategically, Paul was like a god, destroying the emperor's and the baron's armies, something the Fremen tribe had thought impossible. In the palace, the baron tried to climb to the throne, but behind him, the supreme being was approaching. Paul, with a dagger at his hand, advanced towards him and ended the baron's reign. The soldiers stood motionless, protecting the emperor. Paul looked at them and ordered them to throw the baron's body into the desert. Meanwhile, Halleck led his army to attack the Harkonnen headquarters, killing the soldiers outside and looking for Raven to take revenge. Raven desperately attacked him, but with his own strength, he could not touch Halleck and was killed instantly. After Freeman's victory, the great clans began to gather. The emperor happily welcomed them, thinking that he would be saved. Paul then approached Chani, asserting that no matter what happened, the only person he loved was her. Next, Paul came before the king, shouted at the Supreme Mother, making her silent, and threatened the king to make peace by marrying the princess to him. Chani could not believe her ears, but it was true. The emperor suddenly insulted the deceased duke. Outraged that his father had been humiliated, Paul demanded a duel with the king. Whoever lives will hold the throne. At this moment, Rotha stepped forward, declaring that he would join the fight. Paul accepted, making everyone nervous because Rotha's strength and madness were known to everyone. Both of them drew their knives. Considering their family relationship, they were cousins. However, Rotha did not care about their relationship, so they rushed at each other with powerful attacks. Paul was kicked away, but he got up and continued to fight. Paul was stabbed in the stomach. When Rotha thought he was about to defeat Paul, suddenly the knife in Paul's stomach was pointed towards Rotha's heart. This was also the image Paul saw when he drank the water of life. Then Rotha fell down. At this time, Paul came to see the emperor. Seeing this, the princess asked Paul to spare her father on the condition that she would agree to marry Paul and give up the throne to her husband. However, at the decisive moment, the great clans opposed Paul's ascension to the throne, forcing Freemen to declare war on these clans. After that, they left together for the south on the airship. Chani refused to go with him, deciding to ride sandworms and leave. The Supreme Being has officially launched the brutal holy war that he saw in his prophetic dream. The movie ends here, but there will definitely be a third part about the war between the Fremen tribe and the clans. Paul has the ability to predict his fate. Will they be able to defeat that mighty army? Thank you for supporting the channel so that the channel can develop as it is today. If you find it interesting, don't forget to leave a like and comment to share your thoughts on this movie. Especially subscribe to the channel to follow my latest movie recap. See you again.